The Independent Electoral Commission has released its preliminary report on the candidate nomination process. It has received a total of 59,272 candidates from 276 political parties ahead of those municipal elections. Well, joining us now is the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer of the IEC, Mawethu Mosery. Mr. Mosery, good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. I mean, one just looks at the numbers, 276 parties that have registered candidates, and in this country we have 257 municipalities, so just a very superficial reading of those numbers. We have more parties than we have municipalities in this country. Is this a big shift from where we were in 2016?
Good evening, Kathy, and good evening to your viewers. Indeed, it is a big shift from the 2016 election. The 276 political parties already registered for this election is over 100 more parties than we had in 2016. Candidates are almost at the same number, just 59,000 shy of the 61,000 that we had in 2016. However, we've not concluded the final capturing of those that were handed in manually in our offices, so we could actually surpass the 61,000 of 2016. The biggest challenge, I think, for us and the quality of the election, Kathy, is that there's just 10,400 seats of councillors in the country that are being contested by these almost 60,000 candidates that we were able to capture yesterday.
So, so you're looking at a situation where you have, for every post that would be available in the wards, at least 6 people that are contesting for those wards. Are you finding that the number of independent candidates is higher in certain areas of the country?
Certainly, the overall total of the independent candidates for this election compared to 2016 has increased by about 14%, and there were still another 200 odd that we needed to capture during the course of this afternoon. So certainly we are looking at the increase in independent candidates contesting this election, which to a large extent attest to the vibrant democracy, but also attest to the willingness of people to come out and stand for office in the various wards. In terms of independent candidates, we did not expect the number to be as high as it is, and it is indeed very encouraging.
So what does this mean logistically for the IEC?
Well, logistically, when we talk the printing of ballots, as well as the counting and the announcement of results, the tallying of results, it means to us we've got to be very meticulous, because we've got to count each vote for the type of election that is taking place. If we do a quick count, there's plus minus 4,500 wards in the country. Each ward is a complete election on its own. There's about 257 municipalities in the country. Each municipality is an election on its own. But on top of that, you then have a PR ballot for each municipality and the district councils, which increases the different types of elections. So we've got to make sure, particularly with the independents, that we've captured their photographic submissions correctly in the correct word, and when we print the ballot paper, they are indeed visible. So are the logos of political parties. So in the area of preparing to print a ballot paper is a major challenge. But the secondary challenge is actually balloting education for the citizens of this country, because then we've got to be in each and every ward and be able to explain to the citizens as the Electoral Commission on who is contesting and how they make their choices and how they mark their ballot when they've made those choices, Kathy.
The IEC is now working towards an election on the 27th of October. Before the Constitutional Court, you've argued that it would practically be impossible for the IEC to hold this election without contestation. And yet, you know, when we look at just where we've been in the last couple of months, as an organization, you've been insistent about the fact that you're ready to host the election. Were you saying that just to inspire a sense of confidence when you really knew that you would not be ready?
Indeed, Kathy, those assertions by the Electoral Commission are correct. In terms of the logistics of the election, the compliance with the legal scheme, we are on schedule, we are on point, and we will indeed, even if the court were to say proceed with the election on the 27th of October, we'll be able to give South Africans an election on 27th of October. What we've raised with the court is that the environment on which the election takes place is equally important, that it is conducive for a free and a fair election. And we are citing the build-up to the voting day as the compromised environment, in that we were under the lockdown levels that prohibited political gathering, political activities. It even limited our own activities in terms of civic education. And because of those limitations, this election was not free for political parties to campaign as they would want to. And in that context, we are looking at the period building up to voting day as the challenged period which we've placed before the court, and where we say, even if logistically and administratively we can deliver an election, but it will not meet the quality of a free and a fair election where political parties were free to campaign and anyone was free to attend any meeting. And obviously, as we know, the restrictions around the pandemic limit human interaction and human gatherings, Kathy.
You are currently asking the National Treasury for an amount of close to 80 million rand so that you can procure personal protective equipment. Why is this only being done now? Because I imagine that, you would have been aware of the restrictions in terms of the budget cuts that your organization has been facing.
Well, it's not a presentation that we've only made now to National Treasury. We've been in dialogue and in budget discussions with them since last year. Obviously, as we speak, we did have funding for PPEs for our staff for ordinary work. Secondly, we also have PPEs for the registration weekends, although the weekend did not take place. And then what we said was outstanding is a budget allocation towards the voting day. And the current discussions with National Treasury do not indicate a difficulty in making those kinds of provisions. Obviously, the other options which are operational exist, that the PPEs that were not utilized for the registration weekend could be used on voting day. So the options are there in terms of PPEs, but we are also not foreseeing a major challenge with the discussions we've had with the budget office.
All indications so far, at least judging by way of the questioning of the Constitutional Court justices, there's been this suggestion, very strongly so, that the Constitutional Court could well be the wrong place for your application and that you should have gone to Parliament in the first instance. So if you fail in this application for direct access to the court, are we going to see this matter go before Parliament? And what is the scenario that would then unfold?
Kathy, if our application is not successful, the obvious process is that we will continue with the election on 27th October in terms of the timetable that we now have and have published. Also, we will proceed to that election knowingly the quality challenges on this election.
So you would, so you wouldn't go to Parliament?
I'm coming to that
Okay.
as my last point, to say the option of going to Parliament was limited by the time it takes to process and agree on a constitutional amendment. We are quite aware of the requirements in the Constitution for a constitutional amendment. And from the report that we had asked for a compilation of, it was clear that the time available between the election and amending the Constitution would not be sufficient to conclude a resolution of National Parliament on the amendment of the Constitution. It is indeed, if directed by court, an avenue that we will take. We also, however, raised an issue that the pandemic is one incident that we face now. Does it demand that we amend the country's constitution on the current environment that we have, which on all our wishes would be a temporary environment, and once we've reached herd immunity as a country, there wouldn't be a need of that constitutional amendment that we would have requested and sponsored with the National Parliament. So there were a number of considerations, but the key point was the time it takes to amend the Constitution, hence the suggestion that approach a competent court to give you an order on this. And the order we expect is an order that says we are not amending the Constitution because it's not probably within the authority of the court, and alternatively then find us to have not delivered an election in terms of the Constitution and give us an opportunity in terms of time to provide South Africans with an election that will meet the constitutional requirements. Katie.
Mawethu Mosery is with the Independent Electoral Commission, so you can imagine with this many parties, this many independent candidates, and a process that is still well up in the air, the local government elections of 2021, will it be 2022, are going to be interesting to watch, whichever way you look at it.